सबसे पहले इस इजलास के सदर प्रोफेसर इम्तियाज हसनैन साहब से गुजारिश करता हूं आप डाइस पे तशरीफ ले आए। हमारे दरमियान 3 पेपर रीडर्स हैं, एक ऑनलाइन है उनमें। मैं प्रोफेसर शिरीष चौधरी साहब से गुजारिश करता हूं आप तशरीफ ले आए। प्रोफेसर पंचानन मोहंती सर से गुजारिश करता हूं आप तशरीफ ले आए। जी सर, ये पहले का था। प्रोफेसर खतीब सैयद मुस्तफा साहब से गुजारिश है, आ जाएंगे, थोड़ी देर के बाद ज्वाइन कर लेंगे। और डॉक्टर वाले जमाले असीली जो है ऑनलाइन है, वो सबसे आखिर में जुड़ेंगे हमारे साथ। देखिए, पूछिए, देखिए उनसे कहिए नहीं आई हैं। इन 3 पर्चा जो इस सेशन में 3 पर्चे पढ़े जाने हैं, उनमें सबसे पहले प्रोफेसर शिरीष चौधरी IIT मद्रास से गुजारिश करता हूं आप आए और अपना पर्चा पढ़ें।
मैंने जरा रिक्वेस्ट किया कुछ डेटा मुझे प्रेजेंट करना, तो अपलोड हो रहा है। ठीक है, तब तक बातचीत करते हैं,
बात कर लीजिए। हाँ जी,
कितना टाइम दे रहे हैं मुझे?
15 मिनट तो है ही है।
हाँ ठीक है, 15 मिनट का
15
सर जब वो एक्टिव हो जाएगा तब तो 15 मिनट शुरू होंगे अभी आप।
नहीं ठीक है, ठीक है, कोई नहीं, ऐसा ठीक है साहब।
वो लगाने से कुछ नहीं होता।
ठीक है, ओके। सर आपका कौन सा है?
ये
अच्छा ठीक है, तो
जो ज्यादा पुराना हो वही मंग रहा होगा, 1992 ईस्वी का
सर आपने इसको
पैदा हुए थे। अच्छा सर, जब तक ये डेटा का कारोबार करते हैं, जितने लोग यहाँ किस्मत के मारे फंस गए हैं, मैं उन सबों को मानू की ओर से स्वागत करता हूँ। और अंग्रेजी हिंदी क्या चलेगी? अच्छा, हाँ, I guess everyone here understands Hindi and Urdu?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's wonderful, really. Now, please allow me to introduce myself. Here I find they have written Shirish Chaudhary, IIT Madras. I used to be there about 10 years, until about 10 years ago. But I am retired and I teach at a primary school at my village in Bihar. And I'm inviting you all to visit me and come and teach there. We need generous scholars like you. That is another problem, language education, education of rural India, particularly government primary schools. हाँ, बिल्कुल यही है. Okay. So with that unnecessary introduction, maybe I should come to the topic. Are you going to project it? Okay, please. All right, yeah. You know, this question is not new. The question I am asking is, how do words and elements from one language get into another? Is it arbitrary? Anything, anywhere, anyway? Or is there a grammar to it? Is there a rule to it? Now, this is by itself, it's not a very new question. All I'm trying to do is to draw your attention to some data and to help you see that this is maybe one possible way of explaining how this happens. But of course, it's a massive question and it requires a very big project of research involving young people like you and not so young people like me also perhaps. And then perhaps we can reach somewhere near understanding the question. The question has many faces, not only what goes from where and how. Why some words in host language, you see, host language receives words from guest language. एक लैंग्वेज से दूसरे में वर्ड्स आते हैं. अवधि में टर्किश के वर्ड्स आए, अवधि में पर्शियन अरबिक के वर्ड्स आए, अवधि में संस्कृत के वर्ड्स आए. तो वही वर्ड्स क्यों आए, दूसरे वर्ड्स क्यों नहीं आए? तो कुछ इसका आंसर है कि टेक्निकल वर्ड्स थे, उनकी जगह दूसरा नहीं था. जब अंग्रेजी आई तो हिंदी उर्दू सबों में डॉक्टर आ गए, ट्रेन आ गए, स्टेशन आ गया, कार आ गई. तो कुछ तो टेक्निकल है, कुछ नॉन टेक्निकल भी चीजें हैं अपने यहाँ. जैसे हम पिकल को हिंदी उर्दू में अचार कहते हैं. अचार पोर्चुगीज का वर्ड है, तो क्या हम ये मान लें कि इंडिया जैसे ट्रॉपिकल कंट्री में अचार के लिए वर्ड नहीं था? So there are lots of questions. If you make a list of these questions, you will find that you easily reach more than 100, and they require investigation by properly trained linguists and ethnographers, and possibly then you could reach. What I'm trying to do here is to motivate some young scholars in this hall and elsewhere to take up some of these questions for further and fuller investigation. All I'm trying to do in the next 10 minutes is to present some data and to draw your attention to how mixing happens. Please bear with me. It seems that more nouns than adjectives, than verbs, than adverbs are borrowed. Verbs are also borrowed, but then verbs require adding some other element from the host language. Relatively speaking, articles, prepositions, conjunctions, morphemes of derivation and inflection are, it's not that they are not borrowed or they cannot be, but they are rarely borrowed and they are seldom, they are seldom or rarely borrowed, and it's very isolated examples. But it's not that they are not there. They are there. Let's look at some example. It's a very frequent sentence. मैंने कई डॉक्टरों की राय ली. So doctor comes from English and the plural marker comes from the local language. Avadhi, it used to be doctoran, that famous couplet from Ras Khan. Narka paran ko darat hain, narag paran ko nae. So plural in Avadhi was something which over the time contracted and became o. So doctoron ki raay li. Now, can we use English suffix in Hindi? Can we say मैंने कई डॉक्टर्स की राय ली? कह सकते हैं, कहीं इसमें कोई इलीगल नहीं है, लेकिन बहुत ही अनकॉमन है. जो खामखा सारी जिंदगी केवल इंग्लिश मीडियम स्कूल में गए हैं वही लोग इस तरह से बोलते होंगे. जो हमारे आपके जैसे लोग आम स्कूलों में पढ़े हैं वो पहले वाले सेंटेंस बोलते हैं. तो इस तरह इसका उल्टा भी ले लीजिए. When you look at Indian words in English or words of Sanskrit or Awadhi or Bhojpuri or local origin, Indian origin in English, what happens? It still happens the same way. The word may be borrowed from another language, but the structural elements like inflection and some other things, case markers, they come from the local language, the host language. So for example, look at this sentence in English. Yoga gurus have earned respect for Indian traditions. हम इसको अगर चाहें इंग्लिश में बोलना तो क्या ऐसे कह सकते हैं? योगा गुरुओं, क्योंकि गुरु को तो गुरुओं कहते हैं संस्कृत में, ये हिंदी में. योगा गुरुओं have earned respect for Indian traditions. कह सकते हैं कोई इसके लिए, and लेजिस्लेशन नहीं है जो रोकता हो, लेकिन कहते नहीं है. यूजुअली ऐसा होता नहीं है. The point I'm trying to make is words, lexical items may be borrowed from another language, but they are often subjected to structural constraints of the host language. ये एक ग्लोबल ट्रूथ दिखाई पड़ती है. यही है ऐसा मैं नहीं कर सकता हूं. But it seems, it looks like this were the global trend. तो एक साइड में फुटनोट में कहता हूँ, एक प्रोजेक्ट कर रहे हैं हम लोग अभी. इम्तियाज साहब उसके कप्तान हैं और उन्होंने दो एक हम जैसे लोगों को भी जगह दिया हुआ है. अलीगढ़ से ही एक मुबारक जी भी हैं. तो हम लोग एक प्रोजेक्ट कर रहे हैं कि हिंदी उर्दू का जो हिस्ट्री है वो अपनी जगह पे ठीक है, लेकिन एक पैरेलल हिस्ट्री ये हो कि हाउ डिड पीपल्स लैंग्वेज, हाउ वाज द लैंग्वेज ऑफ people of a vast mass of land from one point of India to the other formed over 400, 500, 600 years using words from several languages. A new language is born, and how did this happen? So we have called it, some papers have also come. The project is in progress, but I am presenting some data from the progress. तो अगर डेटा में आपको कोई कमी दिखती हो तो आप सिर्फ मुझे ही गुस्सा मत कीजिए, इम्तियाज साहब को भी गुस्सा कीजिए और मुबारक को ज़्यादा गुस्सा कीजिए, क्योंकि हम दोनों बेचारे उसी के कंधे पर बैठे हुए हैं. ये अगर if you write it in generative terms, if you make a compact rule, if you compress it in the language of computer science, if you compress the rule, then it is pretty simple, look at the word. New word is formed when host language accepts new word. Now, host language may or may not impose structural elements upon words from guest language, either before the word or after the word, or in some cases within the word, infixes. It can be a prefix, it can be a suffix, it can be an infix. And that operates at all levels: semantics, syntax, morphology, phonetics, phonology, or even further down. If you atomize it, if you peel the word like onion, you will find that it happens at all levels. But at all levels, only lexical items are borrowed from the guest language, and structural items, case markers, articles, plural and singular markers, or derivation, words of derivation, when you change a verb into a noun, or you change a concrete noun into an abstract noun. Doctor, doctory, pesha. Okay, so it happens with a combination of structural elements from the host language. That seems to be one algorithm for entire grammar of all borrowings worldwide, global rule. But it seems to be, it is still subject to rigorous investigation. Allow me to present some unusual data. Here is an example of use of Persian in Sanskrit. I have taken this verse from Abdul Rahim Khana's work, Kheta Kautukam. कितना टाइम बचा है अभी? नहीं. Okay, it seems, the story goes that once Emperor Akbar had a question, and Rahim, since he had brought up Rahim not only as his relative but also as his disciple, Rahim had the first tutor in Badshah Akbar, who was himself a very good wrestler, very good swordsman, very good rider, horseman. So one day it seems they were together, and Akbar Badshah asked Rahim, what is there in the astrology of Hindus so that they can do this, that? And because Rahim had been educated both in Sanskrit and Persian traditions, he had been educated in Allahabad, which was then the center of Sanskrit studies. He compressed the entire astrological science of Hindus into 100 verses, and he called them Kheta Kautukam. But here and there, because the kind of creative person he was, he also inserted Persian phrases into otherwise Sanskrit sentences. You have one example. Yadi bhavati jaladul khalkako maut khane. Please pardon my pronunciation. मैथिली छोड़ के मेरा प्रोनाउंसिएशन और किसी भी लैंग्वेज में अच्छा नहीं है, शायद उड़िया में हो तो पंचानंद जी बताएंगे. तो यदि भवति जलादुल खल्क को मौत खाने कम फहमन भवति. If a child is born in the 8th house of Mars, मौत खाने 8th house, jaladul khalk ko in the house of Mars, 8th khane, then he becomes dull-witted. Kam fahamna. Now, look at the structure. Had it been Persian, even in Sanskrit, it could have been said, Jaladul khalka ke, maut Jaladul khalka ke, या खाना maut. Maut खाना नहीं होता, maut खाने नहीं होता, क्योंकि a preposition संस्कृत का locative preposition है. maut खाने, गृहे, घर में तो गृहे, बाहर में तो कुछ और इसी तरह से होगा. कम फहमना, ये डेरिवेटिव संस्कृत का है, ये दूसरी तरह से भी कह सकते थे, लेकिन दिस इज हाउ इट गोज. यू कैन हैव एन एंटायर set of words from guest language, but finally the verb or the structure marker, this comes from the host language. Let us look at another example. Let us look at Sanskrit in Persian. All of these data are available even in India and in various libraries. If we had time, we could talk about it. And if any young person, young scholar is interested in these things, we can very gladly share whatever we know about these things. So please do talk to us after this seminar. Here is an example of Sanskrit in Persian. This is I think 17th century work from somewhere near central UP, near Ayodhya, Lucknow. And the scholar is describing some musical soiree, some evening of musical party. Then he said how people gathered here. So at the time of, before the rains commence in plains of North India, all those invited are supposed to have reported at the place. So Mausama-e Barsat. Okay. Now, if you were using Sanskrit grammar here, you could have said Barsatasya, or Barsate, or Varsha Ritue. But going as we did here, Sanskrit element borrowed in Persian is subjected to the derivational rules of Persian. Lots of other data. I don't think I should waste your time. This comes from Padmavati. For the sake of data itself, allow me to read it. He's one of the, in my opinion, one of the greatest poets that India produced in the last 500-600 years is Malik Muhammad Jaisi. Not only for the theme and content, but also for the metrical experiments he made. His metrical experiments influenced all the subsequent compositions in at least North India. So here in the, as they say, dedication to God, Jaisi says, Samro adi ek kartaru, jeo din kin sansaru, kinnis pratham jyoti pargasu, kinnis te piriti kavilasu. Kavilasu is, the then Persian distorted into Urdu for Kailash. Kailash is the holiest place of pilgrimage for Hindus, or among the holiest, higher than Badrinath, Kedarnath, Amarnath. Now it is part of Tibet and perhaps China. So then he could as well have said Kailashu, but he doesn't do that because Jaisi is using the pronunciation, the idiom of Avadhi as prevalent at that time. And even Tulsidas followed him. When Tulsidas uses Sanskrit words, then he does not say, for example, Sanskrit word for branch is shakha, palatal sha. But Tulsidas doesn't use that. Tulsidas says sakha. Kokari tark badhavai sakha, dental sha. Because that is how people spoke. So the point once again is elite language, Persian or Sanskrit, or common folks, markets language, like Avadhi, Urdu, Hindi. The rule stays. That is, you borrow word from the guest language, but you subject them to structural constraints of the host language. The same thing here. Laki janani ke god vich mod karatara guraz. Jayasi also dedicates his work to Bhagwan Sri Ram. So Laki janani ke god vich mod karatara guraz. Hot manorat sufal sab dhani raghukul sirtaj. वो सिर मुकुट भी तो गा सकते थे. सिरताज वो राज से राइम करता है और बिल्कुल आराम से बैठा. कंपाउंड नाउन है, कोई परेशानी नहीं है. It goes with the grammar of Avdi as well as any other element would. Lots of other things, in the same. I could not hold the temptation of study because the only time a Bihari sat upon the throne of Delhi was when Sher Shah became the Sultan of Delhi. So Jayasi was his contemporary. Jayasi dedicates his work to Sher Shah and says, Sher Shah hi Dilli Sultanu, Chari Ukhand Tape Jas Bhanu. वो सुल्तान भी कह सकते थे. सुल्तानू क्यों कहा? क्योंकि ऐसा ही कहते थे. ऐसे ही उनकी राइमिंग है. You can extend this to, let us say, go to European languages. We believe that English has more than 75,000 words in common use from French, sometimes phrases. So let us take this phrase, very common these days. Since IT brought some money into India, most young people very frequently go to restaurants. बेचारा घर का किचन तो लगता है बंद हो जाएगा. तो a set meal is for 26 pounds, or you can eat a la carte. Eat a la carte is like you can also eat from the card. So the phrase isolated, frozen phrase, comes from French, but it goes into the slot where English would like it, not the way French would like it. I'm going to stop here. We could look at data from Latin in Greek, from Greek in Latin. We could look at a lot of other languages, Turkish into Avdi, Persian into Avdi, Arabic into Avdi, or Avdi into these things, Sanskrit into this into Sanskrit. And lots of that kind of compositions happened in India between Khusro and Premchand over 700 years or 800 years. And these things are yet to be properly recorded, analyzed, and accounted for. I'll stop here. And if you have any comments or questions, please, I'll try and answer them, or we'll take them up later. Thank you very much. Please. ये पेन ड्राइव निकाल लो या आप निकाल दीजिएगा.
निकाल दूंगा.
Thank you, sir.
आजकल उसकी जरूरत कहाँ पड़ती है. ये थे हमारे सामने प्रोफेसर शिरीष चौधरी, जिनसे उनका परिचय आप समाप्त कर रहे थे. और हमारे दरमियान हमारे स्टेज पर 170 से ज़्यादा रिसर्च आर्टिकल्स हैं जिनके, और 350 से ज़्यादा जो है नेशनल इंटरनेशनल सेमिनार्स, और 38 के करीब जिन्होंने किताबें लिखी हैं. मेरी मुराद प्रोफेसर पंचानन मोहंती से है. आप तशरीफ लाएं और अपना मकाला पेश करें. अरे उठा रहे हैं यार, यहाँ से
नहीं, इसमें कौन सा है करना है?
How many cases?
जाइए ना.
No.
ये वाला
No. How many? Go to H PPT.
मैं पेन ड्राइव ले लूं आपसे.
मिल जाएगा आपको.
मिल जाएगा सर. ये है
कवर.
सर, ये है.
Thank you, sir. This is the one, right?
हाँ,
ये है ना.
yes, ये. Good afternoon, namaskar. The title of my presentation is How Many Cases in Hindi Urdu. Here I would like to make a statement which I have made many times, maybe here also. Most of the grammars of the scheduled languages of India, published by various boards of secondary education and taught in the schools, are not grammars of these languages. They are imaginary grammars. So that's what I would like to say. And well, first of all, we have been talking about Hindi, Urdu, and there was a scholar, very important scholar, Ashok Ramchandra Kelkar, who was a Padma Shri and a Sahitya Academy awardee. He coined the term Hirdu. He said that, Hindi, Urdu are, twins. He didn't say twins, I'm saying twins. He said that they are two varieties of the same language. So he he used, in fact, in his book, he has published a book, and the term was Hirdu. But somehow it was not accepted by people. So I would, of course, like to use, Hindi, Urdu here, though I will prefer Hirdu. The reason is that we have discussed it many times in this, conference. But I'll always use Hindi, Urdu because, except a few differences in the vocabulary when you go to the higher levels, grammar and vocabulary, everything is the same between Hindi, Urdu, and one is written in Devanagari script, the other one in Perso-Arabic or Urdu script. Now here we will look at the case system. Now case is a grammatical category. You look at any grammar, case is always treated as a grammatical category. And the term case was originally, given by the Stoics, Greek grammarians. I'll quote John Lyons here. It was the Stoics who gave to the word case the more particular sense that it has since borne in grammatical terminology. Case was the most important of the inflectional categories of the noun, as tense was the most important inflectional category of the verb. It is significant that the term case, originally or less synonymous with what was later called inflection, was restricted to one particular inflectional category. The reason for this would seem to be that most of the other categories, such as gender, number, tense, person, etc., could be related to a principle of semantic classification, although each case of the noun was given a label suggestive of at least one of its principal semantic functions. It was impossible to give a satisfactory general definition of the category of case itself in semantic terms. This is very important. So case should not be defined. It is very difficult to define case in semantic terms. That is the argument. The category of case was, as it were, the most peculiarly grammatical of all the traditional categories of inflection, for it has no counterpart in the sister sciences of logic, epistemology, and metaphysics. And here, so one comment I would like to make: when the nominal inflectional categories decay or get lost in a language, this is the order. First, the gender is lost, then the number is lost, finally case will be lost. I can give you two examples here. I'm sure there are many speakers of Malayalam. Malayalam neither has gender nor number. Bangla speakers should be there. Bengali, Bangla has neither gender nor number. So they are lost. Odia has lost gender. Half of the number is still there and case is still there. So this is the order. So case is the most grammatical in nature. That is the reason for which we should discuss it from the grammatical point of view, not from the semantic point of view. So it's clear from the statement that case should be treated as a grammatical, or to be specific, morphological category. Therefore, I'll not deal with case from the syntactic or semantic points of view in this paper. There are many people who have written on case from the semantic and syntactic point of view. I will not be concerned with those things. Now, let's come to karaka in Sanskrit. In the Sanskrit grammatical tradition, karaka is used as the synonym of case. But interestingly, Panini did not define case. Ashtadhyayi doesn't have a definition of case. He only gave the head rule or adhikara 1.4.23, under which he discussed the 6 types of karaka, and the order was like this: apadana, sampradana, karana, adhikarana, karman, and kartri. But there has been a long controversy and debate by the later scholars regarding the exact status of the karaka and its types. Blake, who has a book titled Case published by Cambridge University Press, states karakas are semantic relations holding between nouns and verb. The verb is held to be the head of the clause, and each nominal dependent is assigned to one of the 6 karakas. But this statement lacks the understanding of karaka. According to George Cardona, a Sanskrit scholar, great Sanskrit scholar, modern writers have disputed the precise status of karaka categories. Some have argued that they are extra-linguistic, logical, and ideational. Some claim they are purely semantic. Others believe that they are also syntactic. I believe the controversy has been somewhat counterproductive. So this shows that people who talk about karaka in Sanskrit don't understand karaka, and Blake is one of them. Matilal's view, Vimal Krishna Matilal's view, is that the syntactic semantic dispute over the nature of the karaka categories might be read as a reflex of a much older dispute between the logicians, Nayayikas, and the grammarians, Vyakaranas. And Patanjali has said, I'm quoting whatever Matilal has mentioned about Patanjali, we accept the authority of speech, what speech tells us, what we depend upon for deciding issues. So spoken language is more important than anything else. He further states, it is clear here that karaka categories are intermediaries between the semantic interpretation and grammatical suffixes. His final remarks are, the concept of karaka was presumably clear to the native language user as it was to Panini, but it is almost impossible to define it or to find a lakshana, that is a uniquely distinguishing feature that would belong to all and only the 6 well-known karakas. So this is the problem with the definition of karaka in the Sanskrit grammatical tradition. All of us know that Sanskrit has 6 karakas, and that is nominative, accusative, instrumental, dative, ablative, and locative. There is no genitive or possessive case. There is no vocative case. These are called Sambandha Pada, the 6th case. And Sambodhana Pada, vocative case, they are called Sambodhana Pada. I'll just give you one example. Ramasya Putraha Odanam Pachati. Ram's son is cooking rice. Look, Ram's son as a phrase related to the verb Pachati, cooks or is cooking. But you cannot say Ramasya Odanam Pachati. You cannot say that because who is cooking? Son is cooking. Ram's son is cooking. So Ram's doesn't have a direct relationship with the verb. It is son that has direct relationship. Hence, the Ramasya, which is 6th case, the genitive case is a genitive. Is not a case in the Paninian grammar. And then the second example, Vatsa Tvam Vidyalayam Gacha. The son, you go to the school. Son has no relationship with go. So you go to the school. So you has relationship, and that is the reason vocative also is not considered a case in Sanskrit. They are called a pada. The same is true of the vocative, and it's done. Okay. But the some linguists define the category of case in a little different way and have determined 8 cases in Sanskrit. It's Whitney. His grammar first published I have got a copy of that, 1879. Then Thomas Burrow, 1973. They say that there are 8 cases in Sanskrit. There's a 6 cases as, Paninian grammatical tradition is +2, genitive and vocative. There are 8 cases in Sanskrit. So this is the problem. Now, look at, I have taken only nara, and I have given all the forms in singular, dual, and plural. Now, you will see that nara, and singular, look at the nominative, all these things, nara, naram, narana, naraya, narat, narasya, nare, nara. Here, every form is different. But look at the dual and plural, there are there are syncretisms, there are neutralizations. For example, you see instrumental and dative, narabhyam, narabhyam, that kind of thing, you can see that. So only in singular, they are all different. That's why they say there are 8 cases, okay? Now, case in Hindi Urdu. Following the Sanskrit grammatical pattern, most of the Indian languages say that there are also 6 cases in Sanskrit. Most. I don't say all, most. Most Indian languages have 6 or less number of cases, primarily because there are no more than 6 cases, 6 different forms. According to the Sanskrit grammars, the verb assigns case. However, according to Burrow and Whitney, any noun which is inflected to show a syntactic function has a case. So the definition of case, how the case has to be treated, that's different in Burrow and Whitney's grammars, when our people have taken it in a little different way. Now, you take a couple of examples. Mera beta aaya hai. Now, you see that mera beta aaya hai, aaya is the verb, and mera beta is the noun phrase. But beta is directly related to aaya hai, but mera doesn't have anything to do with aaya hai. It has to do with beta. So that is the reason for which, these people also following Sanskrit treated that mera is not a case. It's a sambandha pada, genitive case, possessive case, whatever you want to say it. The same thing is true of the vocative form, sambodhana, beta ghar jao. But it's beta, when I say it doesn't have anything to do with jao, beta tum ghar jao. So that is, tum has to do, as we have seen in the English examples. Okay. Now, it was Sunit Kumar Chatterjee who, published his volume, the ODB, The Origin and Development of the Bengali Language, in 1926, published by the Calcutta University. It was a PhD in France, first published in 1926. He proposed that there are 2 cases in Bengali. 2 cases mean, look, morphologically speaking, formally speaking, grammatically, you take the form, not the meaning. Grammar is form. It has nothing. If you look at meaning, go to the dictionary. If you talk about form, talk about the grammar. I'll give you a simple example. You will find go in a dictionary. You will never find went. You will never find goes. Or you walked, you will never find. Because these are parts of grammar. You look for grammar. That's the reason for which, if you are interested in meaning, consult a dictionary. But if you are talking about grammar, you will have to talk about the forms. Okay. Chatterjee says that there are 2 cases in Bangla, direct and oblique. And this is what has been followed by most of our grammarians. Most grammarians say that there are 2 cases in Indian languages. The same thing, oblique. For example, bachcha ja raha hai, bacche ko bulao. Bachcha is direct form, bacche is the oblique form. Bacche ke liye, bacche se, bacche par. So everywhere bacche, it is different from bachcha, hence it is called oblique. Okay. Now the Hindi Urdu linguists have added a 3rd case, that is vocative. Let's say बच्चे आए हैं, बच्चों को बुलाओ, बच्चों से कुछ लो, बच्चों पर दया करो. But when you address them, you don't say बच्चों, you say बच्चों. I mean, a lot of people I hear now, a lot of people say बच्चों इधर आओ. No. If you look at Mohammed Rafi's song, आओ बच्चों तुमको से, it's not बच्चों, it's बच्चों. There's no nasalization there. So there are 3 cases in Sanskrit morphologically. One is direct, second one is oblique, and third one is vocative. This is what, these linguists have discussed. And the motivation for 3 forms 3 cases come from the bacche, bachcho, and bachcho. So that is what happened. Now, and they also say that when the marker ne, that's called ergative marker. I don't know what is that in Hindi. बच्चे ने खाना खाया और बच्चों ने काम किया. So that ने, whenever ने marker, you will see that इस बच्चे ने काम, बच्चे मतलब बच्चे इधर आए हैं. You won't say बच्चे ने काम किया, बच्चों, you will have to say बच्चों ने काम किया. So, the बच्चे इधर आए हैं, बच्चे is the direct form, plural I'm talking about. But when it, बच्चों को बुलाओ, बच्चों से कुछ करो, बच्चों पर करो, बच्चों ने ये काम किया. See, बच्चे becomes बच्चों. This is, बच्चे is the direct form, बच्चों is the oblique form. So there are some grammarians who have said that when ne is added, the noun will be in the oblique form. That's not true. मैं यहां आया हूं, मैंने काम किया. मुझ, मेरा नहीं होता है. तू यहां आए, तूने काम किया. हम यहां आए, हमने काम किया. आप यहां आए, आपने काम किया. So कौन आया, किसने काम किया? See, there is a difference. But when it first person pronouns, second person pronouns, they do not go into the oblique form when ne is added. This is something which is quite important. But there is a very interesting thing here, that is, we say unhone, we say inhone, we say kinhone, we say jinhone. So this is something which is not discussed in most grammars. So here you will see that this unhone, inhone, etc., and you can say jinhone, kinhone. Our argument here is that since this is a separate form, it should be accepted as a separate case, because we are talking about morphology. Morphological forms, if there is a separate morphological form, we'll claim a morphological case, grammatical case. So here my argument is that the ergative case has to be recognized as a separate case in Hindi Urdu. I told you that most Hindi Urdu grammarians have talked about direct case, oblique case, and vocative case. But here, ergative case, it's very clear that you will have to add ergative there. The objective forms, I'm not using dative and accusative, because Hindi Urdu don't make a distinction between dative and objective. If there are some Telugu speakers here, you will know that nenu ninnu chosanu, but nenu niku ichanu. मैंने तुमको देखा, तुमको दिया. In Hindi Urdu, both say tumko, but in Telugu, you cannot say that. You will have to say ninnu chusanu, tumko dekha, niku ichanu, tumko diya. So there is a difference between accusative and dative, but Hindi Urdu don't have that distinction, for which I have always used objective. Direct object and indirect object, I have put them together, I'm using objective. Objective forms of these pronouns will take hain, inhone, inhe, तुम्हें, etc., किन्हें, हैं. But fascinating is the interesting, the pronoun hum takes only hame, not hum hain. Hame, no hame. It is never discussed in any Hindi grammar. It's because there is a rule of de-aspiration that operates in Indo-Aryan languages, and I have discussed that. And according to which, if two adjacent syllables contain aspirated consonants or ha in each one, the second one gets de-aspirated. Since both the syllables have ha in hum and hai, the second hai loses ha and becomes, I'll give you most, we'll say hath, not hath, though we say hath. Odia uses hatha. Assamese uses hath. Bengali uses hath. No tha. Hasta, no, is ta. Then, many times I have to dil dhoondta hai, never dhoondhata hai. I have heard very minutely, it's dil dhoondta hai. Dhoondne. Haunt, not haunt ha. We write ha, but pronounce ta. So that is the rule of de-aspiration. That's why you don't have hum hai, we'll have hame. Again, we'll see what the first and second person pronouns have entirely, how different forms in the genitive case. Now see that, pronoun waha, then the oblique form will be us, then genitive form will be uska. It's not my fault, it's the fault of the machine if something is not properly aligned. I tried my best, couldn't do anything. So these examples clearly demonstrate that the genitive should also be treated as a separate case. No, because you'll say that hamare upar daya karo. You see, hamare upar. So hamare upar is hamare is not the case. This is but when you talk about hamare is the oblique form, you say upar daya karo kind of. Mere upar daya karo. Even nowadays people say mere se, mere ko. In the dialectal form, I'm not discussing that. So genitive forms should also be treated as a case in Hindi Urdu. Just a couple of minutes. Again, tere is a single form with two meanings. Consider the following example. मैंने तेरे लिए फोन किया. I brought तेरे लिए फोन लाया. I'm sorry. मैंने तेरे लिए फोन लाया. I brought a phone for you. मैंने तेरे घर के सामने खाना खाया. I ate food in both the tere are different. Tere liye is a part of case. When tere ghar ke samne tere is not, a part of case. It functions like an adjective, but I will not get into that. And there are many such examples. Mere liye, hamare liye, tumhare liye, etc., etc. That's the reason for which you will have to treat this as a kind of case. To summarize, on the basis of the above discussion, the following 5 cases can be determined in Hindi Urdu, can be proposed in Hindi Urdu: nominative, oblique, ergative, genitive, and vocative. Another important but neglected aspect of the Hindi Urdu case system is the gamut of case markers which have hardly found a place in the Hindi Urdu grammars or grammatical treatises publications. It's time all these markers were collected and classified according to their functions. I'll give you a couple of examples. What case will one assign? You say, mere liye kuch leke aao. What is mere liye? A lot of people say it's dative. No, I'm sorry, it's not dative. It's not dative. Now, liye is benefactive. It's not dative. Sampradhan nahi hai ye. क्यों संप्रदान when you देते हैं किसको सह भिक्षुकाय भिक्षाम ददाति, so that is a different case altogether. Now तुझ जैसा आदमी मैंने नहीं देखा, या तेरे जैसा आदमी तुझ जैसा, suppose you say. So what is this जैसा? Okay, now there is तेरे संग मैं नहीं जाऊंगा, तुम्हारे संग नहीं जाऊंगा. What is संग? And तेरे बिना मेरा काम नहीं बनेगा. बिना, recently in an interview selection, professor selection interview, I asked it, there was a discussion and case. I said, okay, बोलो तुम्हारे बिना मैं कुछ नहीं कर सकता, तुम्हारे बिना which case? बिना, because it's never discussed in our grammars, I'm saying. There are many other things to be discussed. Such things have to be collected, all the case forms, and they must be classified according to their functions. Thank you. तेरी तरफ, मेरी तरफ वो आ रहा है. What is taraf? So that has to be discussed. So, it is elative. I'm sure many of you might not have heard this term. So these are the issues which need to be discussed. So thank you very much. I'm through. So that's the namaskar aap sabko.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया सर. ये थे प्रोफेसर पंचानन मोहंती सर, जिनसे उनका परिचय आपने सुना. और इस फहरिस्त के मुताबिक तीसरा नाम प्रोफेसर खतीब सैयद मुस्तफ़ा का है. आप अलीगढ़ से तशरीफ लाए हैं और तकरीबन 8 किताबें आपने लिखी हैं, 50 से ज़्यादा आपके रिसर्च आर्टिकल्स हैं और लिंग्विस्टिक के हवाले से आपने बहुत सारे काम किए हैं. आइए हम उनसे उनका पेपर सुनते हैं. हमारे दरमियान प्रोफेसर खतीब सैयद मुस्तफ़ा.
लैपटॉप
सामईन हज़रात, आदाब, अस्सलाम वालेकुम, गुड आफ्टरनून और नमस्कार. मेरा पेपर दक्कनी पे है. आपने इंट्रोडक्शन में ये कहा कि मैं अलीगढ़ से हूँ. علی گڑھ میں تھا، میں علی گڑھ ڈپارٹمنٹ آف لنگوسٹکس میں پروفیسر تھا، لیکن میرا ہوم اسٹیٹ آندھرا پردیش ہے. ریٹائرمنٹ کے بعد اب میں آندھرا پردیش شفٹ ہو گیا ہوں، فی الحال آندھرا پردیش میں ہوں. بہرحال اب میرا جو پیپر ہے دراصل دکنی پہ ہے. میں نے دکنی پر ہی ریسرچ کی تھی میرے پی ایچ ڈی کے لیے، تو اسی کو میں آگے بڑھا رہا ہوں. اور فی الحال جو میرے پاس پیپر ہے جو میں نے ابھی لکھا ہے اس سیمینار کے لیے، اس کانفرنس کے لیے، وہ پیپر ایک مختلف سا پیپر ہے. ممکن ہے کہ اردو والوں کے لیے زیادہ دلچسپی کا باعث ہو یہ پیپر، اور اس میں لنگوسٹکس بھی ہے اور اس میں اردو بھی ہے، دونوں چیزیں ہیں. دیکھیے ٹائٹل اس طرح سے ہے، کلاسیکی دکنی اردو اور جدید دکنی اردو چند وضاحتیں، یہ ٹائٹل رکھا ہے میں نے. تو اس میں اس پیپر میں اپنا جو پریزنٹیشن ہے انگلش میں اور اردو میں دونوں میں، جیسے کہ ابھی مکس کر کے ہم بول رہے ہیں تو اسی طرح سے میں بھی کروں گا. تو سب سے پہلے دکنی کیا ہے ایک سوال ہے، اور اس کے بارے میں لوگ کیا سوچتے ہیں، دکنی اردو کے بارے میں لوگ کیا سوچتے ہیں. سب سے پہلے یہ سوال ہے. دکنی اردو کے بارے میں عام سوچ یہ ہے کہ حیدرآباد اور اس کے گرد و نواح میں بولی جانے والی اردو دکنی اردو ہے. علماء حضرات جو اردو ادب کے میدان میں تحقیق و تخلیقی کام کاج کرتے ہیں عموماً یہ سمجھتے ہیں کہ وہ اردو زبان جو 16ویں 17ویں اور 18ویں صدی کی شروعات تک دکن میں رائج تھی اور جس میں بہت سی مثنویات، قصائد، غزلیں اور گنی چنی نثری تصانیف تخلیق پائی ہیں، وہ دراصل دکنی اردو ہے. یعنی یہاں پہ عام آدمی، عام جو انسان ہے، لیمین ہے، جسے لیمین کہتے ہیں، لیمین کیا سوچتا ہے کہ بھئی حیدرآباد اور حیدرآباد کے گرد و نواح میں جو بولی جاتی ہے وہ دکنی اردو ہے. جبکہ اسکالرس یہ سمجھتے ہیں، خاص طور پہ اردو اسکالرس کا شاید نظریہ یہ ہے کہ بھئی جو دکنی ادب کے لیے استعمال ہوئی ہے، خاص طور پہ 16ویں 17ویں اور 18ویں صدی کی شروعات تک جو دکنی تحریر میں آئی ہے، ادب کے لیے استعمال ہوئی، اس کو دکنی کے طور پر دیکھتے ہیں. اس کے بعد دوسری پرابلم یہ ہے کہ ایک سائنٹیفک نظریہ بھی ہے. سائنٹیفک نظریہ میں زبان کو ہم سائنس کے نقطہ نظر سے دیکھتے ہیں، یعنی اس میں لنگوسٹکس انوالو ہو جاتی ہے، سوشل لنگوسٹکس انوالو ہو جاتی ہے. اس نظریے سے اگر ہم دیکھتے ہیں تو دکنی کی ڈیفینیشن جو ہے تھوڑی اور وسیع ہو جاتی ہے اور براڈ ہو جاتی ہے. دکنی اردو کے متعلق درجہ بالا، یعنی جو اوپر جو دیا ہے میں نے جو نظریہ، اس سے برعکس دکنی اردو کے متعلق درجہ بالا نقطہ نظر کے برعکس ایک سائنسی نقطہ نظر بھی ہے، جہاں جدید لسانیات اور خصوصاً سماجی لسانیات کا عمل دخل ہے. اس نقطہ نظر میں زبان کو سائنسی خطوط پر دیکھا اور پرکھا جاتا ہے. یہاں صرف ادبی زبان ہی نہیں بلکہ تکلمی زبان کی بھی بے حد قدر و قیمت اور اہمیت ہے. اس نقطہ نظر میں خصوصاً سماجی لسانیات کے مطابق ہندوستان کے عصری لسانی تناظر میں دکنی اردو زبان کی ایک بولی ہے. دکنی اردو زبان کی ایک بولی ہے، بالکل اسی طرح جس طرح اردو کی دیگر بولیاں مثلاً لکھنوی اردو، بہاری اردو، کرخنداری اردو، ممبئیا اردو وغیرہ ہیں. ان بولیوں کے مقابلے میں دکنی اردو کی صورتحال کچھ مختلف اور انوکھی ہے. ماضی بعید میں اس کی حیثیت بولی کی نہیں، زبان کی رہی ہے، اور وہ بھی ایک مضبوط و مستحکم زبان کی. اس میں قابل قدر ادب بھی تخلیق پایا ہے. کچھ علماء کے مطابق کچھ عرصے کے لیے سرکاری زبان بھی رہی ہے. اس کا تفصیلی ذکر اس مقالے میں آگے آیا ہے. واضح ہو کہ فوری درج بالا سطور میں جیسے ہم تکلمی دکنی اردو کہہ رہے ہیں، وہ کوئی نئی اور علیحدہ زبان نہیں ہے، بلکہ دکن میں صدیوں سے بولی جانے والی دکنی اردو کی ارتقا پذیر اور توسیعی شکل ہے. فی الحال ہم اس کو عصری دکنی اردو کے نام سے موسوم کر سکتے ہیں. اسی طرح دکنی اردو جس کا ذکر اس مقالے کی ابتدا میں آیا ہے اور جس میں ادبی تخلیقات کا ذخیرہ دستیاب ہے، وہ بھی زمانے کے ایک خاص عہد میں بولی جانے والی دکنی اردو کی ادبی شکل ہے. اسے ہم ادبی دکنی اردو کے نام سے موسوم کر سکتے ہیں. یہاں یہ بات بھی وضاحت طلب ہے کہ عصری دکنی اردو اپنی تکلمی حیثیت میں محض حیدرآباد اور اس کے گرد و نواح تک محدود نہیں ہے، بلکہ ایک وسیع علاقے میں پھیلی ہوئی ہے. دکن کے 4 صوبہ جات میں یہ بطور ایک زندہ زبان کے خوب بولی جاتی ہے. یعنی صوبہ تلنگانہ کے علاوہ آندھرا پردیش، کرناٹک اور تمل ناڈو میں ایک بڑی آبادی اپنی روزمرہ زندگی میں بطور مادری زبان دکنی اردو ہی استعمال کرتی ہے. دکنی اردو کے درجہ بالا لسانی پس منظر میں مقالہ نگار ادبی اردو اور عصری دکنی اردو کی لسانی ساخت پر تنقیدی نظر ڈالتے ہوئے اس نتیجے پر پہنچا ہے کہ اول ذکر دکنی اردو آج کے تناظر میں ایک منجمد، غیر فعال اور غیر شفاف زبان ہے. یہاں میں یہ کہنا چاہتا ہوں کہ جو زبان 16ویں 17ویں اور 18ویں صدی کی شروعات تک استعمال ہوئی، ادب میں استعمال ہوئی، وہ خاص طور پہ ایک فروزن لینگویج ہو گئی. ایک طرح سے اس کے رولز جو ہے، مارفولوجیکل رولز اور سنٹیکٹک رولز جو ہے، وہ ایک دم فریز ہو گئے، آگے نہیں بڑھ پائی. وہ اسی حد تک ہے اور آج بھی جو ہے اس کا سٹیٹس وہی ہے. کسی بھی نقطہ نظر سے یہ ارتقا پذیر زبان نہیں ہے، لہٰذا اسے کلاسیکی دکنی اردو کہنا مناسب ہوگا. اس کے برعکس عصری دکنی اردو ایک متحرک، فعال اور سیال زبان ہے. کسی بھی زندہ زبان کی طرح اپنے ارد گرد کی زبانوں سے بہت کچھ لیتے اور دیتے نظر آتی ہے، لہٰذا اسے جدید دکنی اردو کہنا مناسب ہوگا. زیر نظر مقالے میں اس قسم کے امتیاز اور اصطلاحات کے لیے مندرجہ ذیل سطور میں مثالوں کے ذریعے جواز پیش کیا گیا. اب اس پارٹ میں جو اس مقالے میں جو یہ پارٹ ہے، اس میں یہاں میں نے دونوں کو کمپیئر کر کے دیکھا ہے. یعنی 3 لیولز میں نے لیے ہیں. ایک تو مارفولوجیکل لیول لیا ہے، یعنی صرفی سطح لی ہے، ایک نحوی سطح لی ہے، اور ایک جو ہے لفظیات، ووکیبلری، کس طرح کی ووکیبلری دونوں میں استعمال ہو رہی ہے، وہ میں نے کیا ہے. میں یہ حصہ پڑھتا ہوں. یہ اس میں ایک اور چھوٹا سا وہ ہے سب ہیڈنگ، اس کو میں چھوڑ رہا ہوں. دکنی کیا ہے اس کو بھی ڈیفائن کیا ہے میں نے. ہاؤ اٹ اوریجنیٹڈ، وہ کیسے پیدا ہوئی، اس کے بعد کیسے آئی. بیسیکلی یہ ہندوی زبان کا ایکسٹینشن ہے دکنی. ہندوی زبان جو 13ویں صدی میں جو دلی میں رائج تھی، ہندوی زبان کا ایکسٹینشن، کیونکہ ہندی جو ہے ہندوی دکن میں آ کے ٹرانسپلانٹ ہوتی ہے اور یہیں سے جو ہے یہ آگے بڑھتی ہے اور یہ آگے چل کر دکنی کا روپ لے لیتی ہے. اس کو میں نے ڈسکس کیا ہے، لیکن یہاں میں پڑھ نہیں رہا ہوں اس حصے کو، وقت کی پابندی کے حساب سے اس حصے کو چھوڑ رہا ہوں میں. یہاں پہ پھر ادبی دکنی اردو کی چند لسانی خصوصیات، اس پر میں روشنی ڈالتا ہوں. ادبی دکنی اردو میں اسما کی جمع عموماً 4 سفکسز سے ہوتی ہے. اے، آ، یا اور واں. ان کی مثالیں میں نے دی ہیں. اے کی مثال جو ہے قصے، گھوڑے وغیرہ وغیرہ، اور آ کی مثال جو ہے مرداں ہے، مریداں ہیں، عارفاں ہیں. یہ مثالیں ہیں. یا کی مثال حوصلیاں، آدمیاں، انکھیاں وغیرہ ہے، اور واں کی مثال جو ہے پاواں ہے اور پاوراں وغیرہ ہے. لیکن ایک انٹرسٹنگ بات یہ ہے کہ ادبی دکنی اردو جسے ہم کہہ رہے ہیں، اس میں اوں سے بھی جمع بن رہی ہے. یعنی جو اردو میں، جو آج کی اردو میں جو اوں سے جمع بنتی ہے، اسی طرح سے بہت ساری مثالیں جو ہے اس میں اوں سے بھی ہیں جمع بنانے کے لیے. یہ انٹرسٹنگ بات. صرف اتنا ہی نہیں، جمع الجمع کا کنسپٹ بھی ہے. جو ادبی دکنی اردو ہے اس میں جمع الجمع کا کنسپٹ بھی ہے. بہت ساری مثالیں ہیں، صبرہ صاحب پڑھیں گے تو اس میں یہ مثالیں جو ہے آپ کو ملیں گی. جیسے عشاق جو ہے جمع ہے، عاشق کی جمع عشاق ہے، لیکن अदबी दक्कनी उर्दू ने उशाकों भी बनाया है, सॉरी उशाकां भी बनाया है, उशाकां। और इसी तरह अनासिरा, उनसुर की जमा अनासिर है, फिर अनासिरा जो है बना रही है दक्कनी उर्दू, यानी अदबी दक्कनी उर्दू। इसी तरह असहाबा, साहब उसकी जमा असहाब, उसके बाद असहाबा। तो इस तरीके से एक नई बात इसमें है जो आज की दक्कनी उर्दू में, जो असली दक्कनी उर्दू है उसमें वो नहीं। अदबी दक्कनी उर्दू में ज़मायर के इमला में खासा वेरिएशन मिलता है। मसलन मुझ, मंज, तुझ, तूज, वो, इसमें सब स्पेलिंग वेरिएशन बहुत ज़्यादा है। आप मुख्तलिफ दक्कनी की दस्तावेज़ात अगर खंगालेंगे, मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट खंगालेंगे जी,
थोड़ा कंक्लूड कर दें।
अच्छा कंक्लूड कर देना, ठीक है, ओके। टाइम नहीं है, मैं यहाँ पे सिंटैक्स को भी डील किया है मैंने यहाँ पे। तो सिंटैक्स में भी बहुत सी इंटरेस्टिंग बातें हैं। उसमें यह है कि भाई जो करंट, जो मौजूदा दक्कनी उर्दू है, जो असली दक्कनी उर्दू मैं कह रहा हूँ, उसमें जुमले की साख्त आप देखिए, दो चार जुमले यहाँ पढ़ता हूँ मैं। उन्हें नाश्ता करा हूँ बोल के बोला, हैदराबादी दक्कनी उर्दू में हम बोलते हैं उन्हें नाश्ता करा हूँ बोल के बोला। ये जो बोल के है कंप्लीटली एक डिफरेंट फॉर्म है, जो आज की उर्दू में भी नहीं है, मेयारी उर्दू जिसे हम कहते हैं उसमें भी नहीं है, और जो अदबी दक्कनी उर्दू है उसमें भी नहीं है। तो इस तरह से नई चीज़ें आ गई हैं यहाँ पे। और इसी तरह ने का इस्तेमाल भी नहीं है। आज की जो असली दक्कनी उर्दू है उसमें ने का इस्तेमाल भी नहीं है। और लफ्जियात में बहुत ज़्यादा फ़र्क आ गया है। आज की दक्कनी उर्दू की लफ्जियात बहुत सारी दूसरी ज़बानों से, द्रविडियन लैंग्वेजेस से बहुत सारे अल्फाज इसमें आ गए हैं, जबकि उसमें जो है इस तरह की बात नहीं है। अदबी दक्कनी उर्दू जिसे मैं कह रहा हूँ, इस तरह की कैफियत उसमें नहीं है। और ने का इस्तेमाल भी जो है अदबी दक्कनी उर्दू में, जो सबरस वगैरह अगर आप देखें तो उसमें ने का जो इस्तेमाल है वो फिक्स नहीं है। कहीं ने को सही ढंग से जैसे आज उर्दू में इस्तेमाल करते हैं उस तरह से उर्दू में नहीं हुआ है। उर्दू में हम ने के, इम्तियाज साहब 2 मिनट बस, ने का इस्तेमाल जो है वो हम जब ने इस्तेमाल करते हैं तो वर्ब का जो अग्रीमेंट है वो मफूल से होता है, ऑब्जेक्ट से होता है। लेकिन ये कि सबरस में इस तरह से नहीं है। सबरस में एक आध जुमला मिलेगा जहां ने का इस्तेमाल सही माना जा सकता है, यानी ऑब्जेक्ट के हिसाब से। बाकी जगहों पे बहुत सी जो है प्रॉब्लम्स हैं सबरस की ज़बान में। ने का इस्तेमाल आज की उर्दू के मुकाबले में सही नहीं है सबरस के, जबकि आज की जो असली दक्कनी है उसमें ने दूर दूर तक जो है इस्तेमाल नहीं होता। तो इन तमाम चीज़ों को सामने रखते हुए मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि जो असली दक्कनी उर्दू है इसको जदीद दक्कनी उर्दू कहना चाहिए, और जो अदबी दक्कनी उर्दू है जिसके फीचर्स जो है एकदम अलग हैं, जो असली दक्कनी उर्दू से जो आज की दक्कनी उर्दू है उसके फीचर से कंपेयर करके देखते हैं तो बहुत सारे डिफरेंसेस हैं। और वो ज़बान जो है एक फ्रोजन लैंग्वेज है। एक पैराग्राफ आप पढ़ेंगे तो उसमें से 70% आपकी समझ में नहीं आएगा, यानी 30% आपकी समझ में आ सकता है। मैंने लिखा है ये, लेकिन वक्त की कमी की वजह से ये सब मैं पढ़ नहीं पाऊंगा। बहरहाल उसको जो लिटरी अदबी दक्कनी उर्दू जिसे मैं कह रहा हूँ, जो तहरीर में आई है, जिसकी तख्लीकात हमारे पास मौजूद हैं, तो उसको जो है क्लासिकल दक्कनी उर्दू कहना मेरे हिसाब से सही होगा। बहरहाल मैं सामीन का रिएक्शन चाहता हूँ इसमें। शुक्रिया बहुत बहुत।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। अभी ऑनलाइन जुड़ रही हैं प्रोफेसर वाला जमाल अल असीली जो इजिप्ट से हैं, और इनकी गुफ्तगू के बाद 2 सवालात हमें ऑनलाइन लेना है। एक प्रोफेसर अनवीता अब्बी हैं, उनसे सवाल लेना है, और दूसरे प्रोफेसर हेंज हैं जो ऑनलाइन हैं। तो आइए सबसे पहले वाला जमाल अल असीली साहिबा से गुजारिश है कि आप अपना मकाला जो है 10 से 15 मिनट, बता रहा हूँ आप अपना मकाला जो है 10 से 15 मिनट के अंदर में तमाम करेंगे। डॉक्टर वाला जमाल अल असीली का ताल्लुक जो है ऐन शम्स यूनिवर्सिटी इजिप्ट से है। आप वहाँ एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर हैं और इनका बहुत ही मशहूर मजमुआ कलाम दुख्तर नील है, आपने पढ़ा होगा या सुना होगा उसके बारे में। बहरहाल मैं वो उनसे गुजारिश करता हूं कि मुकर्ररा मुद्दत के अंदर आप अपना पर्चा तमाम करें। आपके दरमियान वाला जमाल अल असीली। आवाज जा रही है, आवाज जा रही है? कुछ नहीं।
पता नहीं मेरी आवाज आ रही है या नहीं। अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
आवाज जा रही है।
हमारी आवाज जा रही है मैडम?
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आवाज आ रही है?
अनम्यूट हो जाइए आप। कुछ फंसा हुआ।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आवाज आ रही है? बस मैं जानना चाहती हूँ मेरी आवाज आ रही है या नहीं।
आपकी आवाज आ रही है, आप हमारी आवाज सुन रहे हैं? आवाज आ रही है, आवाज आ रही है।
हेलो, अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम सलाम। आप अपना मकाला पढ़िए।
ओके ठीक है, आवाज आ रही, ठीक है, अभी मैं सुन रही हूँ, ठीक है जी। अस्सलाम वालेकुम मुअज़्ज़ज़ हाज़रीन, उम्मीद है कि आप सब खैरियत से होंगे। और आज इस अहम और बावकार कॉन्फ्रेंस में आप सबके सामने हाजिर होना मेरे लिए तो एक बहुत बड़ा एजाज़ है। इससे शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहती हूँ क्योंकि आपने एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म मुहैया किया जहाँ हम इल्म और अदब के अहम तरीन मौज़ूआत पर तबादला ख्याल कर सकते हैं। तो आपकी मेहनत और लगन काबिल सताइश है।
हाँ, हमारे सामने प्रोफेसर अन्विता अभी मैडम हैं। आपके कुछ सवालात हैं, आप सवाल लिखिए।
मैं बात कर सकती हूँ?
जी जी।
मुझे लिखने में थोड़ी समस्या होगी। इम्तियाज जानते हैं मैं मुंह ज़बानी ही बात करती हूँ, ठीक है?
जी
आप मुझसे सुन पा रहे हैं ना?
जी जी, सुन पा रहे हैं।
हाँ, मुझे तीनों ही पर्चे बहुत अच्छे लगे। पहली बात तो ये कि मुझे यहाँ शामिल करने के लिए बहुत-बहुत शुक्रिया। And I'm very thankful to these three scholars who read very good papers. And in fact, all three of them generate a lot of questions and discussions, but I'm sure we don't have time. So I'll just give very brief comment of my own on perhaps on the first two and maybe also on the third one. So the first, the Shirish Chaudhary ji, your paper was very interesting as you were talking about how the mixed grammars are generated. But there is one reservation that I have. You have certainly given very good importance on the borrowing of the lexemes or the lexical items. However, you said the structures generally of the host language remains intact, which is not very true all the time. It all depends upon how intensive and long the contact between the two languages is. If the contact is long, then even the structure is borrowed. And we cannot overlook the fact that Hindi Urdu, because of the Persian influence, has changed so much that it is very difficult to segregate now what is indigenous and what is not indigenous. Take, for example, prefixes of all kinds or suffixes of all kinds that the modern Urdu or Hindi has. So even the Persian suffix like ish, like in koshish, farmaish, malish, this is a part of bound morphemes. Similarly, pandani, this e suffix of an adjectival and also creating noun is again a Persian suffix. Similarly, Arabic ab, even in gulab or Punjab, ab meant water, but it is a suffix which is now added to all kinds of, even Punjab is a Sanskrit word, and then Punjab becomes the land of five rivers. So bound morphemes gradually enter into the host language depending upon how intensive is the context. It is true that right in the very beginning we always borrow only the lexical items, and gradually it goes to the what I should say compound nouns, where the two semantically identical words are put together. Like you can say kam kaj. So one is Sanskritized, the other is from Urdu or maybe originally from Persian, or Saf, Sutra, Hasi, Mazak. Even the latest in Punjabi, they say phal, fruit. One is English, other is Punjabi or Hindi. So this is the very first stage of borrowing, but gradually and gradually bound morphemes and even the structure, the language grammar changes. You see, look at the Sanskrit syntactic structure, which was very inflectional, highly inflectional. But we have moved in the modern Indo-Aryan languages, we have moved to the agglutinative structure. So we say Ram ne gadhe ko pita. So you have ko separately. So or Ram ki kitab. We never say Ramasya pustaka. So you see the inflection also changes to agglutinative. This is this highly structured change. So this was one point that I wanted to make clear, that depending upon the length of the contact, the morphemes of the bound nature also incorporate into the language very deeply. Look at where you are standing there in Hyderabad. The plural suffix is a Persian plural. So you have danta. Or I remember this CAF's Bhopali's slogan, Bol Jawana Halla Bol Gariba Halla Bol. Remember? Bol Majura Halla Bol. So Bol Kisana Halla Bol. This suffix is actually a plural morpheme from the Persian plural suffix. Now the second observation from Professor Panchanan Mohanty's paper. Well, there are many issues, Panchanan, that I would like to discuss, but of course the time is short. But let me say something which may make you think also, that you see, case, if you remember Filmorian's famous article Case for Case, he dwells upon all these points that you have just mentioned about the how Sanskrit grammarians were looking at case differently and what the modern languages emote. According to the number of languages and the large number of languages that I had the opportunity to investigate, I have come to the conclusion that case for case can be seen from the point of view of semantics. It has different flagging system. So there are the different languages flag cases differently. However, underlying semantics does reflect the relationship of one noun with another noun, or one noun with verb, both. One noun with other noun is very easily reflected on what you call genitive case, or like Ram's book, or the locational case, the book on the table, or the accusative. And but there are also semantically, if you go, have been division also between experiential uh, cases vis-a-vis non-experiential cases, because the subject marking, or there comes the agreement point of view, how the verb is agreed with. So there are experiential subjects versus agentive subjects. So some linguists have also called agentive cases and experiential cases. Similarly, there are dative subjects which actually goes to experiential. So there are many terms that have been come into fore in the recent discussions of cases. And I think the best term would be to take them from the semantic point of view, what relationship holds between what two categories. You talked about the ergativity. I know that ergativity is there in Hindi, Urdu, but if you mind it, it's a split ergativity. So we don't reflect it in future tense. So Ram roti khayega, but you have Mustafa ne roti khali. So then the ergativity only shows in the past tense. But there is more to it, to this ergativity, that very few linguists have paid attention to. That if there is a compound verb, and if any of the two verbs is intransitive, then irrespective of the tense marking, it is always interpreted as an intransitive verb. So you say Ram ne roti khai, past tense. Ram roti kha gaya, still past tense. But then there is no ergativity because of the jana, which is an intransitive. So intransitivity rules the ergative. So what I'm trying to say, that these are the cases which are in Hindi Urdu, but they may be, if you take khadiya, or if you take other examples, then the one doesn't go by the agreement rule. One has to see what is the semantic basis of the two nouns employed in a sentence, or the verb and the noun. So this was a short what I'm saying, but I'm sure you've opened a very new vista to look into it all over again. But as I said, the Filmorian case for case is a good reminder. And in my book on structures of Indian languages and manual of field field work, I have mentioned, how which kind of cases exist in Austroasiatic, Tibeto-Burman, Indo-Aryan, Dravidian. The every case is not overtly reflected, but deep underlying, we know what is the semantics of the cases. The third paper, that was by sorry for my throat, by Mustafa ji. I heard this your lecture for the first time, and I'm very enamored by the fact that you have compared the two old and the modern Dakhini. I know Dakhini has a lot of Persian influence, so it's a very mixed language. And I'm also happy that you have pointed out that there is no occurrence of ne in this language. So would it be possible to show how the modern Dakhini has merged or has evolved as a mixed language, let's say between the standard Hindi, Urdu, and the old Persian? And the fourth paper I could not hear because the lady was not very audible. So this is what all I had to say in short.
हाय सर, जवाब देने के लिए प्रोफेसर महंती सर आ रहे हैं, आइए।
Thank you. It's a formal occasion, Professor Anvita Abbi, so I won't call you Anvita. So the worry is if we treat case semantically, we will have to treat gender, number, aspect, everything semantically. That's the issue. Nobody will say that gender is male, female kind of thing. It's masculine, feminine. So that is the reason for which, I would argue that case has to be treated morphologically, grammatically, not semantically. So thank you very much. This is the reason for which I'm talking about discussing case from this point of view. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Wait for. Thank you very much. Professor Hens, you are requested to come with remarks.
Professor Abhi, thank you very much. We can't really take this kind of a dialogue now because we are running really short of time. We'll take up the reply and further your response to that. And on behalf of the organizers, I thank you for being with us as a discussant. Thank you, ma'am.
My pleasure.
Professor Hens.
He's not audible.
मैसेज कीजिए ना। सुन नहीं।
Heinz, can you hear me?
नहीं।
Hello? Yes, okay. Yes, Heinz, please. Your comments.
He's not audible. Maybe he's muted his mic. Ask him to unmute.
Heinz, I think you are muted. Please unmute yourself. Yeah. We can't hear you. Just text him.
No, can you hear me? आवाज आ रही है आपको? ठीक है। आवाज आनी चाहिए। नहीं आ रही है?
अब आ रही है।
आवाज नहीं आ रही है?
आ रही है, आवाज आ रही है।
अच्छा, बहुत खूब। तो ख़वातीन व हज़रात, बहुत खुशी है कि मैं आप लोगों के साथ शामिल हो सकता हूं आज। वैसे मैं लिंग्विस्ट नहीं हूं, मैं भाषा विज्ञान में नहीं हूं। मैं वैसे फिलोलॉजी का अनुवाद कैसे करना है वो भी एक सवाल है। जब हम भारतारी को गंभीर लेते हैं, उनके वाक्य पदीय में वो एक लफ्ज इस्तेमाल करते हैं जो आजकल साहित्य का सिनोनिम समझा जाता है, यानी वांग्मय शास्त्र। इसका मतलब है फिलोलॉजी। मेरे ख्याल से वो जो वांग्मय शास्त्र वो साहित्य शास्त्र और भाषा विज्ञान के बीच में कुछ है, तो वही है। And this makes me go on with my commentary to the papers. They were very interesting papers. I completely agree. I'm only a small light in linguistics, of course, but if I dare to say something, it is on my competence as an all-rounder, since I'm an Indologist and I have to teach everything and learn everything. And people understand me as a messenger of India in my department. So anyway, so it's of course clear what Professor Abhi said, Anvita Abhi said on the language contact. The longer the contact goes, the more deep it goes. And we also see this with English. The example à la carte is just an outward example, but English is very much, I mean, it also has to do with the question of status languages. And I mean, that is all together responsible. The growth of Urdu is responsible to, let's say, lack of Persian when we come towards the south. Though in the north, the Sabak-e-Hind in Persian was dominating for hundreds of years, while the south had the Dakhini, and we should not forget that it was Wali Aurangabad who came from the south who made Urdu into a literary language, except in the north. And so this also has to do with status language questions. It's the same for English and French. For hundreds of years, French was a kind of status language in Great Britain and has deeply molded I would say, the European identity of English during that time. So that is my comment on the language contact issue. I would like to comment also on the because I have to be quick on the Karaka issue. That is very interesting. Professor Mohanty said Karaka is a synonym to case in English, or casus in Latin, actually. Well, not completely. So, because the commentaries to Panini and Panini himself uses the term Karaka and Vibhakti. So, Karaka is something like the casus function, semantically, of course, and it relates to the karana, to the verb itself. And that is why he has only 6 karakas, but he speaks also Saptami and Ashtami, and this is feminine because it is the Vibhakti. So when it comes to Vibhakti, it is of course 8, because this refers to the inflections of the noun. So this is also a way, when we think in terms of Panini, it's not so difficult to leave, let's say, an English or a European kind of ways of thinking behind us and come to an Indian way of understanding what grammar is. But that's a very complicated issue. It also has to do with intercultural issues. Very interesting paper also by Professor Khatib, Mustafa Khatib, on Dakhini. The question was, how can Dakhini, does it become dysfunctional because of the dominance of Urdu, or because of the, let's say, the restriction of Urdu to the Muslim community? That's also a big issue. Or because of the dominance of Hindi? That's another point. Of course, Hindi and Urdu, from the perspective from linguistic perspective, is the same language, but it also has political implications. It's not only the script. It sometimes has been compared in Europe with Serbian and Croatian, and Serbian and Croatian are, from a linguistic point of view, it's the same language, but different script, different identities of the speakers. But let's say when we go to the 19th century, it's of course not Muslim identity with Urdu, but it's a kind of intercultural language that is very clear. And now we have the other way. Rehman Abbas comes from a Konkani-speaking community. Now he's translated into different languages, not only English, but also other European languages, because but he is at home in Urdu, because in his youth it was understood that Muslims should learn Urdu instead of Konkani, should go for Urdu instead of Konkani. That is why he went to an Urdu school over there, which was a new development after 1947. So that was my comment to this issue. That's a very interesting paper on the changes of Dakhini. My colleague Ruth Laila Schmidt from Oslo University has written the grammar of Dakhini, and I was always wondering how things are changing now in the present time. But this is a very interesting aspect of it. So maybe I should stop here because of the lack of time. I'm sorry, I have to speak. I'm sitting in a bus now. Sorry for any problems of understanding me.
थैंक यू सर, प्रोफेसर हेंस, थैंक यू। अब प्रेसिडेंशियल रिमार्क्स के लिए 2-3 मिनट में प्रोफेसर इम्तियाज हसनैन साहब से गुजारिश करता हूं।
चले गए वो जी। Thank you very much. बहुत अच्छा, thank you, Heinz. Thank you for being with us. And I'm sure if we had time, we would have taken more comments from both Professor Abi and you. But still, we got some good insights, and we're grateful to you for being with us. Thanks a lot. I think you'll be disconnected now. You'll be disconnected now from, so our sincere thanks to both of you, Professor Abi and Professor Heinz. Thank you. I don't have much time now because we are really behind the schedule. I'll briefly take up one or two comments that I would like to make here. Number one is, in fact, that has already been taken up by Professor Abi regarding the intensity and duration of the contact, Professor Shrish, which is important, and that is important for us to look into it. And what I would like to suggest with regard to Shrish is that this work that's being carried out, it holds significance because it informs us that the texts that we are taking, because we are going back into the history, the texts are the texts which are multilingual texts. And the multilingual texts are being produced by people who are illiterate also. So that suggests that what was the linguistic reality of the time? Today, we have very few cases where people are multilingual and producing texts. And if they are producing texts, they are also educated people. But that's the time when the education was not there in the sense of what we have, a sense of modern education. And the people were multilingual. So that is a very important consideration. And there are things which I wanted to take up. Few things have been taken up by Professor Abi. I will not repeat. The Panchanan Mohanty, the idea of making the morphosyntactic aspect is well taken. I will also agree with you. I think despite Professor Abi being my supervisor, but we do have points of differences. Semantics will not take care of aspects of number and gender, which is important, but cases are to be taken up seriously. And I think the imaginary grammar that has been there all through, the imaginary grammar needs to be demolished, and we need to take up the grammar, which is a grammar based on the semantic considerations. Thank you very much, Professor Monti. Professor Mustafa, just two comments right now. You have very beautifully taken up the different phases that have been there in the development of Dakini, from what the Dakini was in terms of you called it as the language of the layman, common community-based, and what it emerged as a literary Dakini. And then you have got the linguistic and social-linguistic parameters for defining the Dakini. Fine, but when you attribute Dakini from the scholar's literary point of view, and you think that that is to be taken as a classical Dakini, one problem as a sociolinguist, I would ask you that first of all, we need to have Dakini as a spoken form, and that should be reflected even in the census. Because we do not have Dakini in the census at all. Listed under Urdu is not even Dakini. So this is unfortunate. One has to take into account these considerations, and then we have to also follow the parameters that are defined parameters for calling something as classical. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. I'm sorry we are really running behind the scene.
Thank you very much, sir, for presidential remarks. टी ब्रेक है अभी, और उसके फौरन बाद हम लोग सब जमा हो जाएंगे और चाय के लिए बाहर तशरीफ ले चलें।